young girl up in front of the church and ask her to apologize for getting pregnant.
Come on.
Because the truth is, the baby ain't the sin. The sin is the irresponsible act of sex, possibly before. That's what we believe traditionally, that the sex is the sin. We believe that traditionally that the sex is the sin, not the baby. So if we standing people up to apologize for having sex, I'm the pastor of Fellowship Chicago, and I want to apologize. If we're giving apologies for having sex before marriage, how long of a service are you going to have so everybody can get their apology in?
Absolutely.
Who going first? Which deacon? Which minister? Which choir member? Who going first? Temple man, come on down the steps. The refiner's fire makes you loving and compassionate, not cruel and rude and judgmental. And when I preach a sermon called Sometimes the Church is Whack and People Fight Me, every week we keep proving sometimes the church is whack.
Mm-hmm.
You've been through all of that and you still judging somebody?
Tell the truth.
You got some nerve. Some of y'all above the age of 56, they better be glad you were pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, pre-TikTok, because we would have had all your stuff. Some of y'all better open up and find some joy in the fact that we can't trace your videos from Freaknik in Atlanta. Before you got bangers and corns and was still wearing 6-inch stilettos, you better be glad we don't have that footage. The refiner's fire, because he's trying to make me better. Not just for me, but so my life can be a joyous reality for somebody else's life. Can I have some witnesses up in here?
You ought to be glad about that, because there's some people who, when you mess up, they're ready to expose you and never let it go. But because of God, I get new mercy and I get new hope and I have a new birth and I have an inheritance. And here's the one for the shouters, and I'm being kept. All of what I just listed for you ought to give you some hope. Before you pay attention on what's happening on the earth, you ought to shout over what's still happening in heaven. And let me just bother some of you all who've been on social media. Let me bother some of y'all. Let me slow it down one more time. Because of Christ, I have a new birth. I have a living hope. But before all of that, in verse 1 and 2, it says great mercy, which means the reason why y'all not shouting right there is because I need to slow down, because grace and mercy are twins. And and grace is what God gives you that we don't deserve, but mercy is what God holds back from us that we really do deserve. Mercy is at work when you made a mistake and when you fell short, but God's loving compassion comes and grabs you anyway in spite of your mess up. This won't work if you start faking right now like you've never made a mistake. Can I holler at some real Christians who are not ashamed on a Sunday to admit, I'm in church, but I ain't perfect. I dressed up to get here, but I promise you my stuff stinks and I've made some big boo-boos, but God looked beyond my faults and saw my needs. Because I have received great mercy, I can never stand a teenager up in front of the church and make her apologize for having a baby before she was married, because the sin ain't the baby. The sin, traditionally we believe, is the act that took place out of marriage. So if we standing people up to apologize to the church because they had sex before they got married, how long of a service are we fixing to have? And which deacon, which preacher, and which media ministry member is about to come to the front first? If you know God is giving you grace and mercy, another chance and forgiveness, you have no right to put somebody in the front of a room and make them apologize when you did the same thing they did. That gives me joy. that I got a God who forgives me. I have a God who will give me another chance. I have a God that'll save my life when life's trying to take my life. Somebody say, I have joy. I have joy. I have ocean. And you got to stop getting sad every time you drop down, because sometimes your going down is a revelation that the real gold is inside of you. And if gold goes through a refiner's fire, your faith has to go through a refiner's fire. And at the end of it, you come out as pure gold and better on the other side, because God had to separate trash from treasure in the fire. And so I'm learning in this season to thank God for the fire, because something always gets exposed in the fire. Real friends always get exposed when you're in a fire. Who really loves you and who just been faking always gets exposed in the fire. So when you find yourself in a fire, stop fretting and worrying and say, God, refine me so I look like you. Because refiners can't pull the gold out the fire until that refiner can look at the gold and see his reflection on the gold. And maybe that's why it's still hot in your life. Maybe that's why you feel stuck in the same season, because God had to leave you in it long enough so that when God looks at you, God says, oh, you look like me now. Oh, you learning how to pray for real now. Oh, don't nobody have to ask you to find a devotional in this season. Oh, you went and Googled you a devotional so that your prayer life and your reading of scripture could increase. Because when you come through real fire, you get real oil. You get real power. Nobody has to make you come to church. You will tell your friends, I see y'all at the late brunch, but before I get to brunch, I got to go to fellowship and get a word, because these hellions I work with, I need a word to hold me through the week. I wish I had 15 people that knew the fire was good for you, the trouble was good for you, the test was good for you, the battle was good for you. It was good that I was afflicted so that I may learn your word. And I want to congratulate all of you who in 2024 you thought you were going down because you did something wrong. And the truth is, God was making you real. God was proving who you really are. And God's only way, one of the ways God blesses us, is that he allows us to go through seasons that hurt us. But on the other side of that fire, it's your faith